Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast, where we talk about everything dog. Q&As with veterinarian professionals, rescue operators, everyday topics. We cover everything dog on this podcast. So make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media on both Instagram and Facebook. Thanks again for listening. Now here's that next episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the Canine Culture Podcast. This is your host, Brittany, and today we are talking about root cause healing and holistic care for pets. We have a very special guest today, Dr. Marlene Siegel. So Dr. Siegel, thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you for inviting me.
So you have an extensive record in vet med and maybe a not so traditional kind of route through your vet medicine. So tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got started in vet medicine and a little bit of your background there.
Oh, I'd love to. So 41 years in veterinary medicine, actually practicing that whole time. And my change occurred, like most people, when you have a life-altering experience. So we were into showing horses, and my youngest daughter was riding Lily, our show horse, and they had a riding accident where Lily reared in the air, and my daughter was not told or taught, if your horse rears, bail off to safety, because the number one cause of a rider's death is the horse falling over and crushing their rider. So we had a 50-pound child, 10 years old, and we had a 2,000-pound horse. And because my daughter was trying not to fall off, she was literally dangling from the reins, pulling the horse over backwards. So in that process, it happened in slow-mo, but it felt like an eternity. And I could actually see my daughter start to slip to the left side of the horse. And in that couple of seconds, I could see Lily squat on her left hind leg. And as hard as she could, as she was being pulled over backwards, she tried to push herself in the opposite direction. Now, when Lily hit the ground, you could not see any space between my daughter and the horse. In that time, I'm already jumping over the rail and I'm running towards them. Lily got up, caught her breath, and when she got up, she shook, and my daughter was still on the ground, not moving. So when I got there, I truly did not know what I was going to find. And I called her name. She opened her eyes, thank God, and I found out she was fine. She just hurt her pride. But back home, you would have thought that was the end of the story. But no, back home, we had a couple more incidences where something was happening while my daughter was riding. And one time I was standing right next to Lily, and it looked like a seizure went up her left leg, all the way up her neck into her head. And I had equine veterinarians come out and look at her, and they said, "We don't know what's wrong with her, but we can tell you she is not safe to ride. She'll never be shown again. And here are your choices. You can put her out to a pasture or you can put her down." And it was those words, that nothing else can be done, that triggered something inside of me. And I said, I'm not willing to accept that. And so I had friends of mine who came out. Actually, one of my teachers was the one who actually diagnosed her without ever seeing her. And what had happened was, in the show barn, horses grow points on their teeth, and they have to be filed down. Well, Lily's back teeth weren't being filed properly, so she was growing little spurs that were causing her to not be able to bend her neck as an English show horse and be able to reach out, so she couldn't break at the pole. So she was straining her neck for years, and then ultimately ended up getting arthritis in her neck, and that was what the ultimate diagnosis was. But in that interim, I was told she would never be shown again. Well, that horse saved my daughter's life, and something inside of me said, I am going to save her, I'm going to fix her, and that little dynamic duo is going to be back out there in the show circuit. So I started doing chiropractic work, and started with acupuncture, and started with nutrition, and one thing led to another, and it just seemed like as each thing that I was ready for seemed to show up in my field at the time I needed it. What a surprise. And I will tell you, 5 months later, that little duo went on to win the United States Youth Reserve National Championship, which is the most prestigious horse show in the United States for youth riders. My point of the story is that people who are listening, we're all told at some point in our life there's nothing more that can be done, either directly to you, about your pet, or about a loved one. And I want this story to be the inspiration for people to be willing to seek answers where answers may not be obvious. So here I am, this is now over 25 years ago, and there were no answers. There were no other choices. I literally went to my own human chiropractor who happened to be certified in animal chiropractics the year before. And I said, I need your help. And so this began a journey that is going on still today, because I'm always looking for more tools. When you make a promise that you're going to look somebody in the eye and not ever use the words, there's nothing more that can be done, you better have a big toolkit.
Right.
And so that's what I did, is I just kept growing my options. And so now I really do have the largest array of options, therapies, and integrative services of any clinic in the entire world. And I'm a one doctor practice. So it really just takes the motivation and the incentive and the dedication and willingness to fulfill those shoes.
Yeah.
And I was determined, and I'm still determined to do that. So even through my platform of education, I'm still helping to inspire pet parents. Doesn't mean that everybody's going to live forever. We are all leaving this planet. All of us, including the trees, the plants, the animals, we're all leaving at some point. But have we done the best that we can do while we're here? And I think that's really the whole point of Earth School, is to motivate us to do the very best that we can with the skills and talents and dreams and passions that we have, and then bring that out into the world so that the world becomes a better place.
It's crazy you told that story and how you framed it, because your story is why I created the podcast. So my listeners have heard this probably 20 times, and they'll hear it 20 more. In 2016, I had a Pomeranian who was diagnosed with cancer, and it took us 6 months to figure it out. And during that 6 months, it was like, well, it's just her liver enzymes. Oh, it's her pancreas, her potassium's high. And I just kept pushing. And I said, I just don't think that's it. And I remember it was May of 2016. I said, let's just do an x-ray. And they're like, of what? And I said, a chest x-ray. Let's just do it. And they were like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. You're not going to see anything. And they found a huge mass, and it was lymphoma. And so I'm trying to remember kind of the process after that, but I believe we might have aspirated it, or might have just looked at, honestly, her blood work. And they said, she has cancer. She's too sick. There's nothing else we can do. And I said, well, people get cancer, dogs, cats, animals get cancer. Like, there's got to be something, right? And they were like, nope, just, you could put her down if you want. And mind you, at this time, she's still getting around really well. I figured out her diet a little bit more to get her to eat. And so I was just kind of left hanging. I had no idea what to do. And it forced me to go out and try to connect and research and learn about acupuncture, learn about different dietary options for dogs with cancer. And after all of that was said and done, I wanted to help other pet parents, even if it's not cancer. It could be arthritis, it could be allergies, it could be anything. But I just thought, if it took me the amount of money and the number of steps that I took to try to learn this much, there's got to be other pet parents in the exact same predicament. And I want them to know they truly did their best before they called it quits. And not calling it quits, but knowing when it's the right time. And so your story is the exact reason that I do this podcast. And, initially I was going to do this as a blog, and blogs aren't really that attainable. Not everyone reads, and it's a lost art form. So it took me a while, and I said, I'm going to do a podcast on every possible dog topic that could help someone. So if I help one person, like, my mission is accomplished,
Yeah. Well, I think the point that I want to make from both of our stories together is, first and foremost, there is not a bad veterinarian in the world. There's nobody evil that wants you to have to put your dog to sleep because whatever. But when you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, and we're taught symptom suppression, and we have a very limited toolkit that we graduate from college with. We have steroids, we have antibiotics, we have chemo, we have radiation and surgery. Like, that's kind of the toolkit that's out there. The integrative world is pushing the allopathic world to do some more things, but for the most part, that's the toolkit. So veterinarians are very compassionate and they're very kind and loving. And so when they look at you and they say there's nothing more that can be done, they're not being mean. They're not being evil. They really don't have any other option that they know of.
Right.
But as we seekers of truth are out there saying, I'm not willing to accept that, and we start looking for alternatives, or we create the alternative. I'm telling you, there's a lot of things that I've created that there was no protocol for, and I had to figure it out. But I was so determined that I was going to make a difference. So that's the point that I want people to take, is that if you go to your veterinarian and they say there's nothing more that can be done, and their only last tool in their toolkit is euthanasia, if you're not ready for that, or that doesn't feel good to you, or you would just like to get a second opinion, then make sure you do that. Seek somebody who has the background and the knowledge to be able to do more integrative work. And what I love that you asked, you knew that wasn't the root cause. You knew there was something else. And I want every single pet person that's out there to take that as a takeaway, is always ask, what is the root cause? And if they can't answer that, then you need to find somebody who does more like what I do, the bioregulatory approach, so that you can actually find out what the root cause is. And if I may go on for one more second longer, is I'm going to make it easy for everybody. The root cause of dis-ease, there is no disease, there is dis-ease, the body not being in balance, is really three major things. Number one, a deficiency of essential nutrients. Now, an essential nutrient is a nutrient that the body has to eat. You have to get it from the outside. It cannot be manufactured internally in sufficient quantities. So there's a certain number of vitamins, minerals, fatty acids, and amino acids that are essential. And you can find them on the internet, right? Easy. Number two are toxicities. And somebody asked me earlier today, well, how come, since dogs have been eating kibble for a long time, why is the cancer rate suddenly so high? And it's because they can't compensate any longer because of the level of deficiency and toxicity. So it's not just the kibble, it's all the other things added to it. So the toxins that we're talking about are microplastics, mycotoxins, glyphosate, heavy metals. I mean, there's an egregious amount of toxicity in the world that didn't exist 50 to 100 years ago. And the levels are so high right now that our bodies and our pets' bodies just can't compensate. So it's deficiency, toxicity, and usually a combination. And that leads to mitochondrial dysfunction, number three. And to top it all off, there's, of course, the emotional attachments, because we always have something emotional attached to all dis-ease. So when we address at least the first two, the deficiencies, toxicities, and the mitochondrial dysfunction, now we're able to actually look for those underlying problems, and we have the ability to mitigate them and resolve them.
I think that's a great explanation. And for anyone listening, so let's kind of talk about an overview of what it really means to have integrative and holistic veterinary care, because it's still such a taboo topic, and you see different people online promoting it one way or the other. And I'm not saying it's good or bad or otherwise, but I just think there's still this almost negative connotation that it's not a proven veterinary care. It's not a well-studied, and I think you and I know that that's not true. So kind of give everyone an overview of what it means to have integrative and holistic care.
So it's holistic, actually supposed to mean whole body, but it has a negative connotation to people who think that it's woo-woo or there's no science behind it. But like you just said, there's a lot of science behind these. It was back when the Flexner report was produced, commissioned by the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, to really capture the medical industry. They wanted to use pharmaceuticals as the answer to everything. So back in the early 1920s, all the way through the 1940s, all these modalities were taught in medical schools. And then when they took over, this Flexner report can be looked up online, and you can see where they commissioned these two brothers, the Flexner brothers, to study what was actually being taught in the universities. And then the Rockefeller colleges, and then they asked if maybe could they have one of their or two of their people on their committees be part of the review board for the college. And then wow, we're giving you all this money. We would really like to see the emphasis moving in this direction versus that direction. And it wasn't very long before they pretty much squashed anything outside of chemotherapy and petroleum-based products. So that's how it actually came about. That's why we don't see these modalities being taught in the traditional schools. And that's why human MDs and veterinarians, they're taught symptom-based suppression. So they name it, they blame it, and they come up with a pharmaceutical or a surgery or a chemo or something like that. And now we're seeing that not only is it not working, because the rate of cancer, if we had all this wonderful allopathic medicine that was doing such a great job, we wouldn't see cancer rates in dogs at 1 out of 1.65. That's almost 100%. And we're seeing cancers now in dogs under a year of age. So we're seeing young animals having serious chronic degenerative diseases. Now, I'm practicing 41 years, and when I first started, we saw cancer once or twice a year, literally 1 or 2 cancers the entire year. Now I see on average 3 to 10 a week. So what has happened that we're seeing this egregious rise in disease? And it's the deficiency and toxicity that the body just can't cover anymore. So here's the analogy. Your car is a great machine, but it has no ability to repair itself if you get into a fender bender. It doesn't repaint itself. It's going to rust. And if you don't put the right gas and oil in, it's not going to run. It has no regenerative capacity. Now you take the animal body or the human body, and we literally make a new body about every 7 years. They say on humans, we make new red blood cells. We can cut ourselves and we make new skin. We make new tissues. Even the brain, we now know, actually does regenerate very slowly, but it can do that. So we are a regenerative machine, and we are designed to be able to survive, which means that when circumstances are not ideal, the body has a capacity to make do, rob Peter, pay Paul, whatever it takes, and still be alive in the hopes that eventually the winter will be over and plethora will come and you can go back into thriving because now the circumstances have brought about everything that you need to do well. Now, that was a great mechanism in, ancient times when our ancestors were hunters and gatherers and the winter came and they couldn't find food. And if they didn't store enough and they were starving, some people didn't make it, but those that did became more resilient because they had the capacity to survive longer, and then their body made adaptations to these stressors. And so each generation got stronger and stronger. Well, we don't have those needs for adaptations anymore because we have food coming out of our refrigerator in abundance, albeit the wrong kind, but we don't go through starvation. We don't go through extreme temperatures anymore. All those hormetic stressors that our bodies were using to become stronger and more resilient, they're not really part of our lifestyle in the world that you and I live in, which is a lot of abundance and maybe sometimes too much abundance. So what we're talking about is how do we go back and understand the basics of the body? We've become very disconnected from Earth, from our food. We don't even know, and most people don't know where their food comes from. And we've become disconnected from our bodies, from our own innate intelligence. So what does that do to our pets? Well, if we aren't connected ourselves, we certainly aren't connecting them. And we've been, since that whole Rockefeller issue, we've been really brainwashed into fast, cheap, and convenient lifestyles. And we're paying a heavily price for that right now. So what if we got back to our roots? What if we got back to understanding how the body actually works? What if we got back to understanding the metabolic processes, how they function, and how can we support them? So it's a long way to get around your question, but answer is that we need to reconnect with how the body works. And that's what holistic and integrative medicine is supposed to be. So I've kind of gotten away from those terms because they are associated with things that are really Western-based, symptom suppression. But now instead of using an acupuncture needle for they're still using an acupuncture needle for a symptom. So instead of a drug, they're using a needle, but they're still doing symptom suppression. Mm-hmm. What I do is bioregulatory medicine, which is literally meaning that we're understanding these biological processes I just described to you that require these cofactors like vitamin D, magnesium, B12, minerals, zinc, selenium. These are not just these fluffy Flintstone vitamins that we were told about when we were kids. Mm-hmm. These are literally the driving forces to our metabolic pathway. But when we disrupt the body so severely that it can't recover, when we overwhelm the organs of elimination so severely that they can't function and do their job anymore, then we see a change in the body's terrain. If I may make one more analogy, imagine you want to grow a garden, but your soil is horrible. It's like either pure sand, there's no nutrients in it. What are you likely going to grow are weeds. Mm-hmm. The weeds are not the enemy. They are just telling you that the soil is not rich enough. Now, given enough time, the weeds move in and they die, and then the next layer of growth comes in, and eventually, through all of that degradation and soil building, then you start to get a healthier soil. It's going to take a long time, but that's how it happens. And so with our bodies, when we have dis-ease, it's really the signal just telling us, hey, something inside isn't right. We're not balanced. We don't have the right terrain. And so our own cells become disconnected to the mothership, the main organism here, and they become rogue cells. No one's communicating to them. And so they're off doing their own thing. So cancer is not something outside that invades you. It is your own cells that have lost how to communicate with the entire organism. And so they're out there just doing their thing, trying to not die. Mm-hmm. That's a different view. And so instead of being angry at your body or angry at the cancer, really what we need to do is find more love and acceptance, and then figure out, what do we need to do differently? What does our lifestyle need to look like in order for our body to thrive? Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, so much of it is getting back to connecting to Mother Earth. Now, I live in a food forest, a self-made food forest. And so when you go outside and you are touching the ground and you're earthing and you're eating food that you just picked from a bush or a tree or a raised bed, and you look at that with gratitude and kindness and love because you just helped to grow that, you were in community with nature, it is unbelievable how that changes you. Mm-hmm. And more people need to get back to that. We need to turn off the TV. We need to get off the screens and go outside and reconnect with who you are as a soul being. Mm-hmm. And our pets the same way.
Yeah. So with this integrative medicine approach, I feel like a lot of people think it's A or B. It's either which integrative quite literally means to integrate. But nevertheless, people think you're either doing this woo-woo medicine or you're doing conventional vet care. And I think a lot of people are missing that it's supposed to be complementary and working together. It's supposed to be integrated, all of these different modalities and just approaches. And so I think that's like a piece that a lot of people miss, is they can't understand that, current medicine can blend into what we've known for hundreds or even thousands of years. And I'm sure you take a very similar approach. The integrative vets that I've seen, it's very much like, how can we fix this with movement, with diet, with, something a little more natural? And if that doesn't start to work, maybe we start introducing a little bit more and more until it's like, okay, we really might have to go on this prescription, or we really might have to do whatever it might be. Do you feel that that's kind of similar for your practice?
Absolutely. So think of a surgeon who has a surgical pack. Some people may not know that, but when you go into surgery, you have a pack of instruments. Well, you may not use all those instruments in that particular procedure. You may pick the one that is going to be most effective for the outcome that you need. And that's what integrative medicine should be. It should be a large enough toolkit of resources, and you pick the things that are going to be most effective with the least amount of side effects. You start with fixing the terrain. You fix all the biological pathways that you can, as you understand from proper testing of deficiencies and toxicities, and then you figure out the response. If you aren't getting the response that you need, go back into your toolkit and find out why. So that's my approach. And to me, it makes a lot of sense.
This reminds me of a conversation I had today with someone. They were talking about how their dog was having some kind of allergic reaction. They had like rashes kind of on their legs. And then it's like, well, I'll just give them Benadryl. And it's like, well, what caused it? Was it a change in environment, the cleaning solution you're using, the food? And then it's kind of like, let's back up even further. What are you feeding them? What are they eating? What are their daily habits? How frequently are they going outside? What's our current season? What could be going on? And so we have been so brainwashed to be like, let's just throw this at it. And I mean, Benadryl is barely even a Band-Aid. So it kind of goes back to you saying, go back to your toolkit and let's try to see what works. Let's get back to that root cause, because fixing the root cause will lead to a better long-term outcome,
Yeah, but look how we've been brainwashed into, you have a headache, you take an aspirin.
Yeah.
And you never ask, why did you have a headache, right? So this is part of the lack of critical thinking skills that we have been sold with this fast, cheap, and convenient lifestyle. So we don't question, we don't use our critical thinking skills, we don't ask why, we just defer our health to somebody else that is supposed to take care of you. No, there's no one taking care of you but you.
Right.
And if you have a pet, you are their guardian. You have that fiduciary responsibility to be able to make good decisions for them. And I will tell you, I've never seen a bad pet parent. I've never seen somebody who says, oh, I can't wait to open up that bag of toxic food and kill my pet.
Right, yeah.
Nobody does that. They actually come in and go, I researched and I found the most expensive kibble that I could find. And so they're thinking that they're doing the right thing. They want to do the right thing, but they don't know what to do. And so here comes in the education process, because we haven't been educated well on our own nutrition, let alone our pets' nutrition. So what I do is I help people to return to critical thinking skills. And I say, have you ever watched National Geographic? Or at my age, Marlene Perkins with the Wild Kingdom. I don't know, do you remember that show?
I do not.
Oh, see, you're too young. So in my age, we grew up with Marlene Perkins. And so you would watch, National Geographic. So you watch how a carnivore behaves in the wild. So examples of lions and tigers. And so you're watching animals in nature, and that's our best teacher, right? How does nature do things? Because nature does what is sustainable, because what is sustainable is successful. We try to make something novel and better. So what did we make? Plastic? Really? Yeah. It's killing our oceans. It's killing our bodies. We test for microplastics, by the way. I think we're the only clinic in the world that is testing animals for microplastics. And I'm finding some of these animals are off the charts. Like they have particles into the 30 and 40 levels of how many particles they have in their body, which is really, really toxic. And so we go to the grocery store and we don't think twice about buying something in plastic cutting boards, plastic bowls, plastic storage containers, Ziploc baggies. We're just inundated and we don't think twice about it. But now that we're learning about plastic as one example of a toxin, now we can make a conscious choice to say, wow, I'm going to go to stainless steel cutting boards and I'm getting rid of all plastic storage containers in my house. And it's not an easy solution, I will tell you, because when you're talking about having to ship things, shipping in glass, it breaks, it's heavy, it's expensive. So I don't think we're not even tipping the beginning of figuring out how to solve all of the problem, but we can certainly start with solving the problem of what's in our homes and what we're exposed to in our homes.
Talking about home toxicity, I have another conversation I just had like last week. I had a friend whose dog was coughing quite a bit, and it sounded cardiac. And I said, I would do things to reduce the overall toxic load and try to help her overall just respiratory system. And he was like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Well, think very simple." I said, I definitely wouldn't be burning any scented candles. And before I even finished my sentence, he was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, are you burning like a lot of, and I won't say the brand, are you burning a lot of those candles that smell very, very good?" And he's like, "Yeah, all the time." And I was like, "Well, gosh, maybe just start there." And I get it. We're all guilty. Like I try to purchase non-toxic candles. Granted, I know there's still fragrance. Nothing's 100% non-toxic. That is a change I tried to make. But it's little things like that that pet parents are just not educated on at all. I think a lot of the toxins that we face, we don't even know that they're toxins.
Yeah. That is a big area. And, I have a 6-step program that teaches people what to do differently. And the entire step 1, which is multi-layered, is all stop doing the things that are causing the dis-ease. And it's food, it's water, it's the air that we're breathing, it's the chemicals that we're using to clean, it's what touches our skin, it's the EMF, it's the ants in our brain, the automatic negative thoughts. And yes, we all have stinking thinking, but instead of just being a victim to the stinking thinking, what if we use that as a piece of information that says, "Oh, look at this program I keep repeating. I keep having these episodes where I'm constantly angry, I'm constantly frustrated." And then you start realizing that it is a pattern that you have. And now it becomes an opportunity to break the pattern and rewire something more serving. So all of those things, we could go into deep dives on all of them, but that's the first thing that we need to do. We need to get educated on what are we doing that is actually causing the problems. So I love that you brought up the air, because the air in our homes now are the most toxic air that we've ever been exposed to, because our homes are so airtight. And that sounds like a good thing, except that we're growing mold and dust, and we have microplastics. Carpeting, as you're walking across carpeting and brushing, you're aerosolizing these little microplastics and chemicals that are in the formaldehyde and all these forever chemicals that we're exposed to, and you can't see them, and many of them you can't smell or taste, but they're there. And so I work really hard to help people with air purification, because I think that's huge. Air and water, same thing. Don't use tap water. Whatever you do, I don't care where in the country you live, do not use tap water. Water needs to be highly filtered down to 1 micron, so with the air the same way. Highly filtered, structured, a whole new topic. And in my case, I like to have molecular hydrogen infused into the water as an antioxidant, but at least filtered and structured. And your refrigerator, guys, does not do it. It just filters for iron and chlorine, and so it smells good, and that's not enough. We have glyphosate in water, in our tap water. We have heavy metals in the water. We have microplastics in that water. It's really bad. There's probably over 100,000 toxins in tap water.
Oh, wow. I thought I was doing a good job giving my dogs water from the Brita. And now I'm like, it's not enough.
Up the game.
Okay, all right.
Structured and filtered.
This might get into some of your therapies that you specialize in. And so I have 3 written down. I have the ozone therapy, photodynamic therapy, and detoxification protocols. That's a little bit different than therapies, but all of these might be a little bit unfamiliar to my guests, my listeners, because they're a little unfamiliar to me. So can we talk about all 3 of those?
Absolutely. So everything that I do targets a natural pathway in the body. So we'll start with ozone. Ozone is made in the stratosphere, and so it's very natural. It's also made by our mitochondria inside of our body. So our mitochondria, the little organelles that make energy for us so that we can actually function. And mitochondria also are a communication pathway between themselves and the microbiome. So they're literally telling the body when to turn on and turn off gene expression. All that communication goes through our fascia. And it travels through water, through our structured water. Ozone is actually made by the mitochondria in the production of energy, and it's a redox signaling molecule. It helps when a signal is made. It's like when you make a phone call, and if I called you right now, I'm in Florida. I'm not sure where you are, but you're far away.
Florida.
Oh, okay. So we're not that far away, but I could call Alaska or Germany, right? And the call goes through. And that's because there's relay stations, little towers that go along and pass that signal. That's what a redox signaling molecule is. It is helping to pass the signal so it can get further down the information code. And so ozone it's natural, but it can be a pro-oxidant and it can be an antioxidant. But what's cool about it is it turns on over 200 anti-inflammatory pathways. There is no resistance to it. It's antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal, and it doesn't really have any side effects. If you could misuse it, and you could potentially cause a few problems, but 99% of the time it is so safe that I encourage my pet parents to have a little machine at home so that they can actually use it. There's a lot of companies that make ozone baths where you have a little machine that goes, a little filter thing that goes into the water and ozonates the water, and that's phenomenal to lay and have a bath in. You can ozonate water and wash your vegetables so that you take a lot of the pesticides off. And we use it intravenously. We use it rectally, topically. I inject it into acupuncture points. I mean, you name an orifice and we're going to use it. We use it as part of our regenerative program when we're doing joint injections for arthritis. Mm-hmm. So ozone is my, do I have a number one? It's pretty close to my number one because it is so effective. It's so cost effective. And it's something that I really think that everybody should have the ability to do at home with proper education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so next on that list is photodynamic therapy, and I am not at all familiar with this one, so you have to break that one down.
So we are light beings. We are literally light beings. If you were to take a baby, a newborn, and put them in the dark, they would not be able to survive. So light is actually what drives one of the steps in the Krebs cycle, in the cycle that makes our energy through the mitochondria. So we are required to have exposure to light. Otherwise, our bodies don't function well. And low-level light therapy is the term used when we have natural light that interacts with our internal enzymes, biological processes, and helps to activate them and get them to work better. Photodynamic therapy is still using light, but now we're using it in a targeted way to kill pathogens or to kill cancer cells. So we take ultraviolet, blue, yellow, green, red, and infrared are the spectrum that we use. And I have a machine that has a fiber optic, which is a little thin fiber optic piece. And I can actually put that into a catheter, into an intravenous catheter, and put that right into a vein. So now when the blood is passing that light, it's picking up, the red blood cell picks up that color and delivers it to wherever it's needed in the body. So if I give a photoactivator, a compound that the body recognizes that has a light activation, curcumin or turmeric, if you will. So curcumin, we can give an injection or oral dose of curcumin. And curcumin is activated by blue light, a specific wavelength of blue light. So I give that product, it gets concentrated into, let's say, a cancer tissue. And then when I activate it with that blue light, it becomes a lot more enzymatically active, and it creates reactive oxygen species, which are what kill the abnormal cells or bacteria or viruses or fungi. And why this is such an important modality, and it's going to be more important as the next 10 years unfold, is because we are losing our ability to use antibiotics. Antibiotics have been only a blip in mankind, and we have abused it so badly that now we have resistance so high that there are very few antibiotics that are really actually working. But people are so trained, oh, I have a sore throat, I need to go to the doctor and get an antibiotic.
Yeah.
Well, if it's a virus, that antibiotic isn't doing any good, nor is it selective with the organisms that it's killing. So it's killing good stuff and bad stuff. And you're changing the microbiome. You're changing the terrain of the body. And if we don't restore that microbiome, we're losing those species that we just killed off, potentially never to see them again, which is even more serious because most of our genetic information, most of our functional genes as humans and or pets come from the microbiome. So we use more of their genomic information than we do ourselves. An earthworm has like 38,000 functional genes. We have about 21,000. So from a genomic perspective, an earthworm is more genetically sophisticated than we are. But we have learned how to be symbiotic with all these different organisms, from yeast and fungi and bacteria. And as we learn to cohabitate with them and use their genomic information, we become a lot more sophisticated. The problem comes when the terrain becomes so imbalanced that they can't survive normally. And so they create pathogens, because what is their goal? Their goal is to survive. And if your mothership is starting to go down, you want to make sure that you're going to leave somebody behind that's going to be able to live on in another organism perhaps. And so we have it really quite backwards. We need to be nourishing our microbiome. And that's what both low-level light therapy does and targeted photodynamic therapy, where we're looking to use light as a therapy to create an outcome that's going to help the body function better. And it's safe, it's effective, and there's virtually no side effects if used properly.
Okay, that's interesting. I hadn't heard of that. And then the final piece of this, which seems like it could be so many different things, is detoxification protocols. So touch on that a little bit.
Okay, my favorite topic. So we have 6 organs of elimination: kidney, colon, lungs, liver, skin, and lymphatics / fascia. I blend them together because the lymphatics run through the fascia, and the fascia makes up all the space that we thought was just space. So when we overburden these organs of elimination, they can't function properly, and we start to see dis-ease. Interestingly enough, the young veterinarians coming out of school are not taught to recognize when the liver is becoming toxic, because the enzymes are going low. In fact, the labs are changing our reference ranges because it's a bell curve. You know, you have this end, you have the bell curve, and then you have the other side. And they keep shifting about every 6 months or so. They shift the bell curve to meet the averages that they are seeing. Well, the averages today are a lot sicker of a population than the averages that we had 50 years ago. So I don't want to be compared to somebody today. I want to know what thriving looked like 50 years ago. And that's my target. That's where I want to be. We're really having to help people to learn that it is no longer a luxury. Oh, I'm going to go detox. I'm going to go sweat. I'm going to, go do heavy or, breath work. Now it is a requirement because we're all exposed to so many toxins that we have to support our body through step number 1, reducing the amount of exposure, but then 2, how can we actually support those organs of elimination so they work better? And I'll give you one example, the colon. And it's even worse for people because most of our pets are going to the bathroom at least once a day, but some are not. The colon is one of your largest organs of elimination. Skin is the largest, but the colon is really important. And there's a lot of people that can relate right now to what I'm going to say, and they barely have one bowel movement a day. There are people that have one bowel movement a week, and they think that's okay. They don't perceive that they're not healthy because it hasn't hit them yet. They're still functioning. They're still eating, but they've got all of this garbage that isn't getting out. So it's really important that we really go back and visit what does good detoxification look like, because we're not living a lifestyle that supports that. It used to be that people had to run really hard and wrestle and kill their dinner. That was high intensity exercise. And they had fasting and they had sweating and they had to breathe hard when they were running hard. We don't do a lot of that anymore. People go to the gym, but I don't think that really simulates the intensity that we were designed to have when it talked about exercise. And then you look at your animals, and walking around the block with your dog twice a day doesn't hack it, guys. And cats, we keep them indoors and we give them climbing toys, but are they really doing laps around the house? But sometimes they do a few zoomies,
Right.
but that's not the same as high intensity exercise. It's not the same as lymphatic movement, right? That's movement is what moves our lymphatics. And when we're not moving, we're getting a lot of stagnation. When we do surgery or we injure an animal, that causes scar tissue. So the fascia becomes restricted. The lymphatics don't move through there properly. And that's in charge of both producing a lot of your immune system and getting rid of a lot of waste. So these are just a couple of examples of how detoxification needs to be on the forefront of everybody's list on how to stay healthy.
Yeah, that makes sense. I don't normally think of detoxification for animals, for, dogs and cats, but it does make sense. And I don't think we pay a lot of attention to even like how often they go to the bathroom. I'm sure other people have gone to the vet and they're like, well, when was the last time they went to the bathroom? You're like, maybe this morning. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that is something to kind of check back in with.
And most vets don't even ask that question,
Right. Yeah.
right? Most
Yeah.
allopathic veterinarians do not ask that question because they're not tuned into realizing that the colon is a very important organ of excretion. Or the animal has diarrhea. Now, I don't want anybody to be miserable, but it's an organ of elimination. So when you have diarrhea, you want to ask, what is my body telling me? Is it trying to get rid of a toxin? Is it, does it have damage? Does it have, a bacteria or virus that's causing a problem? Is there a toxin that's creating leaky gut? You want to investigate what is causing it, in addition to not just squashing it. Like your first objective when there's diarrhea should not be, oh, let me stop it. It should be investigating and saying, how can I support the body so that it doesn't become dehydrated and you're not miserable, but we're also acknowledging that the body's trying to tell us something. It's doing something important.
Right.
Kind of like the headache.
Yeah, exactly. This is a perfect segue to briefly touch on nutrition. And nutrition could be a 3-day lecture. So give us a little rundown of how you feel nutrition fits into this and kind of what you advise or suggest or look for.
So we are what we eat. That is not just a cute little phrase. We are what we eat. We are what we feed our pets. And in my 6-step process, the very first thing we address is food, because we cannot survive on frankenfood for very long. The reason why most people will go, well, I've been feeding my dog a kibble diet all this time and he seemed to be just fine. Well, first of all, our dogs should be living into their 30s and they're barely making it into their early teens. So no, we're not doing a good job. But I think the easiest way to talk about it is to say, what does nature do? So we know our dogs are scavenger carnivores. No one questions that anymore. And we know our cats are obligate carnivores. An obligate carnivore has no dietary requirement for carbohydrates. Yet we're feeding these highly processed, they call them ultra processed diets that are full of grains. They're stuck together with carbohydrates, whether it's tapioca or potato starch or whatever. But the problem with the kibble diet is, number one, they're enzymatically dead. These carnivores were designed to aid their digestion through eating real living food, right? When protein has enzymes in it that help to break it down. That's why if you die, you rot. If you leave a piece of meat out, it's going to start to rot. And that's because the enzymes in that food are starting to break it down. But when you cook food above 105 degrees, you destroy the enzymes, which are just protein chains. You destroy the enzymes in that food. Now it's enzymatically dead. And the only thing that helps to digest it is your pancreas, your pet's pancreas or your pancreas. And that is not a sustainable model. So kibble or highly processed foods is enzymatically dead. It has a lot of synthetic vitamins and minerals because that's how they have to add it in to make it somewhat stable. It's loaded with hormones, chemicals, and pesticides, especially if it's not organic. A lot of mycotoxins, microplastics. And if it's a kibble, it's very dehydrated. And animals, carnivores, are supposed to get 70% of their moisture from their diet, which means if you were a carnivore and you went out and you killed something and you ate it in the state that you killed it in, then you had all the enzymes you need, you have 70% moisture, and if it was a wild animal, probably healthier than the ones coming from a feedlot that are being fed all kinds of synthetic products and antibiotics and steroids and whatever. So yes, diet to me is the number one. And these veterinarians that roll their eyes and go, oh, it's so toxic and it'll kill you, are just not educated, right? They just don't, they've been told a belief system. Oh, I got to tell you this. This is so cool. So we all have belief systems, but what is a belief system? A belief system is simply a thought that is married to an emotion. And when you combine your thought to your emotion, that becomes your belief system. And we get our belief systems from when we're young and we watch our parents and our caregivers and our siblings and the neighbors and the friends and your teachers and the TV and all these things that influence us into a belief system. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just what you've been told. Now we have to start going back to our critical thinking skills and saying, what do animals eat in the wild and how do they eat it? Now, I'm not telling everybody to become a hunter and go out and shoot Bambi, but we now have enough companies out there. Gosh, when I started my company, I have a raw food company, and when I started my company, there were only 2 other companies.
Oh yeah, there's so many now.
Now there's a gazillion, but they still are going after dollars and not really feeding a species appropriate diet. Because in the wild, you don't see these animals going into cornfields and they're not going through the garden and eating all your vegetables. That they don't do that because they weren't designed to do that. Now, you and I, we're supposed to eat our vegetables, but what are we told? Chew your food thoroughly until it's a pancake batter before you swallow it. And the reason is because we have amylase, a digestive enzyme for carbohydrates, in our saliva. And so we're supposed to chew our food thoroughly to aid in digestion. Dogs and cats do not have amylase in their saliva. They were never designed to be the primary eater of carbohydrates. They tear and gulp their food. So nature's really smart, right? It doesn't waste energy doing things that aren't going to help. So if you have a carnivore who has to tear, gulp, and swallow their food, stuff themselves when meat's available because there's other predators that are going to be coming after them, then why would you put amylase in their saliva when they're not going to eat like that? They're not going to go out but where they got their carbohydrates from, this is the beauty of symbiosis, is the intestinal tract of the animal that they killed who was eating those grasses and digested it for them. And so now you're getting that beautiful fermentation and all those rich nutrients already broken down. And all you got to do is absorb it through your gut. So it's a beautiful model. We've just really created the disaster because we created this frankenfood and we think it's okay, and it's not okay. Really, the processed food for animals came from the waste products of human processed foods. That's where it really came from. Is like, okay, we have all this processed foods for people. We have all this other stuff. What can we make it into? And somebody came up with the idea to make it into a biscuit. And there we go. So it's not even what they were designed to eat. And the AAFCO standards, which is supposedly the standards that try to make pet food healthy, they really got it backwards because yes, we need to supplement our pets with vitamins and minerals and fatty acids and aminos because our food is so nutrient depleted. We don't have regenerative farming practices. So if we think we're eating broccoli and we're getting some whatever we were told broccoli had in it, it really depends on where that broccoli was grown and what was the soil conditions. If the soil only had nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, then you're still missing all those micronutrients. So when I developed my food, I thought, I don't want to be stuck doing the same model because it's not working. So what I did is I separated the macronutrients, meat, fat, bone, and organ meat, and I separated my micronutrients into a bioavailable vitamin, mineral, fatty acid, and amino acid products so that I could dose my patients based on their body weight and their biological needs. And then the owner puts them together in the kitchen so you have the highest quality, the highest freshness, and bioavailability that the pet actually needs in order to survive. But the model that we're working off of right now in the traditional world, I just shake my head and I go, who thought of that? Yeah. Certainly not somebody who cared about health.
Right. It was just someone who needed a bigger bank account, a bigger wallet.
Yeah.
You were talking about the pancreas and the overload kind of on the pancreas. And the first thing I thought of is whenever a dog has diabetes and the vet's like, here's, and I won't say the food on here, here's this food. It's a prescription diet. It's perfect for diabetes. When we know it's still, 60 to 70% carbohydrates, which is the last thing that dog needs. And
okay. Can you imagine my frustration when I go to a lecture from one of these big box companies and they have all of these prescription diets for all kinds of different diarrhea, constipation, and I'm sitting there and I'm not good at shutting my mouth. So I was like, did anybody ever consider that the reason why they have these issues is because they were eating the processed food to begin with? And now you're chasing every symptom with another SKU. Yeah. But you're not fixing the underlying problem. Oh my gosh. I had one girl, she was very young. She was probably just out of vet school. And of course they told her that corn, if you hydrolyze it, doesn't have any toxins anymore. And I'm like, girl, have you actually thought about that statement? And really, where did the glyphosate go? Did it just get homogenized? Like, what are you thinking? It's insane what we see out there in the marketing world. And this is where I have to bring it back for the pet owner. You have to use your critical thinking skills, common sense, which has been taught out of our children. We have to bring common sense back, and we have to ask why. We have to question things. And does that actually make sense? And then go look at nature and find out how nature does it and how can you emulate that?
Yeah. So I want to give the listeners something that they can change today, because if anyone's still listening, they might feel overwhelmed. They might say, oh my gosh, I'm messing up as a pet parent. And you're not, you're learning, you're listening, you're learning.
What Earth School's all about.
Yeah. So what is one foundational change that all pet parents could make today?
Get educated. It really is. We have to start with education, because otherwise you're chasing all of these shiny objects. You're chasing the social media people that are saying, oh, this fixed my dog's itching and this fixed my dog's diarrhea. And if you don't know what you're doing and you don't have the education to be able to, like what you were saying, that you have to make an informed decision. And if you don't have the education, then you can't really implement changes and strategies that are going to make a difference in your health, your pet's health, and Mother Earth. So I would say start with education, but I do have one tip along with that. So when you are hearing information, I want you to take a piece of paper and fold it in half, or if you're on your smartphone, make a column A and a column B in your notes. But column A are all the things that you're learning about that you should be doing, but you're not doing them yet. Column B are all the things you shouldn't be doing, cut dry, no discussion. You shouldn't be doing them, but you still are, because we have not taught you a substitution yet. Column A, all the things you should be doing. Column B, all the things you shouldn't be doing. And you literally pick one thing from column A that you feel you can start with, and then do that until it's who you are, until it's your habit. Pick one thing from column B and just stop it. And if you don't know what to do, call me, there's resources out there for education. I have a whole course for pet parents teaching them this whole concept of integrative healthcare for their pet, because I really believe that it's going to start with their education. And then from there, they can build, whether you learn how to do lymphatics at home and you learn how to decompress the fascia, you learn about diet, digestion, gut health, detoxification. These are core principles of our life. It's not fast, it's not cheap, and it's not convenient.
Right.
It takes a little work. So turn off the TV, go buy the course from me or you or whoever you want to learn from, and then start with your column A, column B, and just then step one, just take a baby step and do one thing. Don't sit there with analysis paralysis, because you'll never do anything. You'll go, oh, it's so overwhelming. It sounds overwhelming, but it really isn't. And then once you start doing something, you go, oh, that's really easy. And before you know it, it's not, you don't even think about it. It's just who you are. And then you go back to your list and you pick another thing, and that becomes the next thing that you take on. And then that becomes super easy because you're used to it and it's your habit. And you just keep going like that. And it really is, in a very short period of time, you're going to make massive life changes for yourself, for your pet, for Mother Earth. And it's important, because by the time the symptoms are there, now you're playing catch up, and it's really more challenging.
Yeah.
So prevention is the key.
So, Dr. Siegel, you have a course, you've got different resources, a blog. So tell everyone where they can find you, website, social media, all of that.
The hub of everything is drmarlenesiegel.com. That's the easiest. From there, my hospital is there, my online store, my online programs. It is my passion and my mission to really transform veterinary medicine, and do that for pet parents and for veterinarians. So I teach veterinarians how to do integrative care. It's just so rewarding to be able to work with a colleague and have them call me and go, oh, you wouldn't believe what happened, and the joy for coming back into our industry, because the veterinarians have the highest rate of suicide of any industry in the world. And it's because we have compassion fatigue. We want to do good. We want our patients to live and be healthy. We want our pet parents to really thrive in this feeling of this beautiful hologram that we're living in. And when things go south, we take it very personal. So I think it's really important that we come together as a community and we support each other and we learn, and no more shaming and blaming and no more pointing fingers, right? When you point fingers, there's 3 of them coming right back at you. So you be the change in the world that we need, and show up that way, and other people will listen and they will follow and they'll see what you're doing, and you'll start having a ripple effect. Because I feel like if we can start with a ripple, we'll turn into a wave, and then eventually it'll be a tsunami. And we can really make that kind of an impact with the world. Like we're talking about microplastics. What if we could really push the world, the industry, to stop making plastic products and find a better solution? Well, there's a company using silicone. How cool is that? So there are solutions. We, the consumer, has to be the one that chooses how to spend our dollars and vote for the things that are actually going to be sustainable for our lives and for the world.
I love that message. I think that's great for our health, for our animals' health, for, like you said, for Mother Nature. So Dr. Siegel, thank you for being on today's episode. You shared a lot of really great information, and we appreciate you.
Well, I am thrilled. I want to see everybody share your podcast and get it out there to the world.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for tuning in to the Canine Culture Podcast. Please make sure you subscribe to the Canine Culture Podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and make sure you're following us on social media. If you have any recommendations, any topics that you'd like to hear, if you know of any guests that would be good for the show, or if you yourself want to be a guest, please reach out to us. Send us an email at canineculturepodcast@gmail.com, or send us a direct message on social media. Thank you for listening, and please share this with any of your dog-loving friends.